This is session 2BG with Javier Estrada Benavides and his fantastic online nightmares and where to find them. Okay. Okay, thanks everyone. I shall begin the presentation. Javier has pre-recorded this and has given me the presentation that I will start now. So sit back and enjoy the show.
Hello, my name is Javier Estrada Benavides. Thank you for joining this session. The title is Fantastic Online Nightmares and Where to Find Them. Now, the reason for this title is actually quite simple. I come from a place where we did a lot of migrations of applications from other platforms in and out of DB2.4z. You name it, from Linux, from Unix, from iSeries, Windows and SQL Server, from Oracle, you name it. And it was just a way to give more power to DB2 and Z and the platform itself, and literally survive in the daily job. Now, something that actually I find very surprising is that during these conferences over the years, I've had the chance to talk to several people, and I hear every once in a while that they only use DB2 for batch applications, and they only see it as a batch database. Why JDBC applications? We have Oracle for that. There is MySQL, there is SQL Server. Well, no, that's pretty much not the case anymore. I'm still very surprised to find that. So I'm going to show you and tell you about some of the usual nightmares that I would see when working on a migration. The agenda has only two sections. The first one is some, if I were to say, human behavior kind of notes that you will see from most people when they move. And the rest is going to be a collection of problems and how to solve them with DB2. Now, I will have to say that I'm going to cover only features from DB2.12, because if I were to talk about the other best practices, I would need several days. Everything you know from version 11, 10, and before that still pretty much applies. But I am going to describe how DB12 came to change a bit in how we do things. And I will include several features and topics, so I will not have time to go through each and every single rule and exception, but I have included the links to all topics in the notes sections for every different topic. So let's get to that. Now, tell me, what kind of applications do you have in your DB2? Everybody's going to say CICS and batch applications. My topic of interest is this one. And more often than not, we see, I actually call them third-party apps. Now, most people would say SAP, but I have worked with several others also coming from IBM, and they all come with their own particular headaches. More often than not, they're actually quite common. So SAP is really not the only one. Now, I am not one of those people who will come with the Gartner charts or some other kind of charts. They say, okay, so for the people working on telco and banks, this is the distribution of the workloads. This is how the environment is changing. No, no, no. I am not that kind of person. I'm only here to describe some of the gotchas and the lessons learned. So DB2 should always be in the scope. And why DB2 and why not the cloud if everybody is talking about it? So one of the key lessons that I learned over time is don't ever play the card of being the weird guy. You are offering a solution, so they don't want to hear how mainframe is different in that. So you know it, I know it. Mainframe is not based in Linux. It is not based in Unix. The things work different in here. But I don't want to hear that. You have to stay open. That's the only way it can actually work. And somebody has to be suggesting to bring more presence to DB2.4c. But before that, so I am sitting right next to you. And I ask, why do you want to move from MySQL to any other platform? Well, you would probably tell me, I know that DB2 has all the critical information, so I don't want to keep administering one JDBC data source for you, another one for Oracle, another one for my current application, and so on. That's still true. But that's not what most people say. What most people say indeed is, I have a problem, and a huge one. I have it today, and I want a solution by yesterday. Be very careful when you hear that, and pay extra attention to what kind of problem they are currently facing. And another solution that is in fact not a problem, but an advantage, if the application is moving from Linux to ZLinux, then you can move the database to DB2.4c, make them talk to each other using hypersockets, in case it is the same machine, and they will be using memory instead of TCP/IP. Okay, but that's just a reminder. So the key point here is they have a problem and they are looking for a hero. So are you the hero? Are you going to make them your new best friends? So let's see a collection of the things they would normally tell you. And don't forget about that, ever. Because if you do, they will come back at you saying that. So they have been skeptical since they heard mainframe. And they want to be portable. Because they are moving, everybody wants to be portable these days. So if they moved once, they are ready to move again. And they will also bring some of the old school mindset, if I can actually label it that way. They will say, for example, so, well, in fact, it's a collection of servers in a cluster, but it was only one instance with one database, with one application. They do not want to hear that your mainframe in only one subsystem has 50 applications connecting to DDF. They don't want to hear that. They still want to believe that they are the only ones, and they are priority number one. Don't forget about that. So, sorry, because I actually didn't find a proper image for this one, so just pretend that this word did not exist. So tell me why moving to DB2 did not solve all of our problems. You do not want to hear this one. They will think about it. So protect yourself, so you will not come to this situation. Now let's look at a few problems and their solutions. Now, I have seen in several conferences that there is usually one person talking about DSM profiles, and then this person is asking, raise your hand if you're already working with them, and nobody actually does. So DSM profiles is a way to tell DB2 that you want a specific behavior to your application. And in this case, when I say application, I mean a thread or a group of threads in DDF. And the recipe is going to be the same regardless of the case. And I am only going to cover one small subset of what you can actually do with profiles. So here it is. Go to the DB2 catalog table, DSM profile. Insert a row, and that is going to be your profile ID. Don't worry, because it has an identity column, and that is going to be the profile ID. Then move to the catalog table, DSM profile attributes, and this is where you will tell DB2 what to do. After that, refresh your definitions by executing the command start profile. And do not be mistaken, this is not statistic profiles. That's a very, very different topic. Some other recommendations. In the manuals, you could see the term filtering category. It's the set of columns that you can use to identify what an application is like. You can use the user ID because you are JDBC, so there is only one user from this data source, the IP address, name of the server, and so on. The recommendation is only use one type. I usually work with location. Only use one type because DB2 is going to match as much as it can. So if you define 5 different profiles with 5 different categories and they all match, you will have no idea what just happened. And yes, they do accept wildcards, but please do not use them. Always be specific. All right, that's a bit of for the intro. So let's get back to the topic, to planning. So what are you going to use to connect to my DDF? Is it a Tomcat? Okay, JDBC. Is it a third-party application? It might be ODBC, in which case you would know because somebody needs to run those remote binds. If it is a message broker, then you would know that it is not ODBC and not a data source. It is one JDBC object working for all flavors and brands of databases. You should know about that because they will come to you and say it is your database. So you tell me how to connect. Give me a manual. I don't care if you are not the expert in JBoss. Tell me. Heads up. Might happen. Okay. So this is the usual reminder. I am sure you have seen this one at least 100 times. And so did I, until I saw it happening in real time. And nobody was able to connect to DDF because of this. So I had to jump in and solve it. Work with the DB2 Binder utility to create the null ID collections. Create at least one with a value of application compatibility 500. And create as many collections as you want so that they match the application compatibility levels that you want to support. But please at least keep this one. Please keep it. And to use them, jump to your JDBC connection pool in the custom properties and insert these two or one of them. But wait. So I said just a moment ago that they don't want to hear a DB2 only kind of solution. But yes, that's right. So this is a contradiction. Yes, that's also right. But I cannot save you from this one. Now, if they do happen to connect after that, you have more controls at your disposal. One of them is, you guessed it, with DSM profiles. you can use them to change the application compatibility level once they connect. So you identify your application, then you go to the column keywords in the DSM profile attributes table and insert this little string, special register. And then in attribute 1, you will insert this, which is going to change the value to the flavor that you are going to tell. That's something you can actually do. Now, I was asking around in IDOC North America. The question was simple. As a DBA, what do you think you should learn besides DB2? For the case of the Z people, the topic number 1 was WLM. So here it goes. DDF threads can be seen as enclaves in SDSF, and they will have attached a service class, which in turn has a setting of priorities on your system. So set them up, please do it. And when you do that, use response times, because velocity goals are better for started tasks. And yes, you can change the definitions dynamically. And if you didn't define anything, then they will come to your system with a service class sysorder. And if there is one thing that I have learned in conferences is that there is no such thing as obvious information. So I actually got this question from another conference. In fact, it was in Mexico. So I had my system, and to the DDF task, I set it up with sysstc, but then I saw that the enclaves were coming with sysorder. What happened? There is no obvious information. Service classes are not inherited. Service classes are very, very different from each other. And an enclave from an application is not the same as a definition from the started task that is working on that. It is not the same. So define one for the DDF task and as many as you need for the actual application enclaves, usually attached to the user ID. This is how most people do it. Now the next one. This has to do again with the old school mindset. So there used to be this user. It was very, very close to root, but it wasn't called root. We used it to apply all fixpacks. We used it to install DB2. That was the user for the DBAs, for the application, and for the developers. And why can I not do the same in mainframe? Well, you shouldn't. You shouldn't. And not so long ago in IDOC, there was a thread of somebody asking because he had this exact same problem. How do I stop people from sharing user IDs? What I said actually in that post is, well, I would prefer to go to RACF using the class serve-out. You define a segment of IPs and then attach it to the TCP/IP profile definitions. You define the RACF profile, and then if the application user comes from this segment, then it can pass. Otherwise, it will just not. It will not. I prefer that way. Another way is to use trusted contexts. In this way, you can map it to specific addresses, and you can also map it to a serve out, but it is not in this specific example. And another one that I also used is, well, if you had no choice, you can do the opposite. You can actually let them connect, but if they run any kind of query, it will fail. How? By assigning an ASU time of 0. But be very careful with this one, because if I am the user or the developer, I connect, and then every single query is going to fail, then come on, what is just going on? Is DB2 down or what? You do not want to see them saying that. And you also should check if your definitions are active or not. So if you use this one, please be in touch with the application people so that they know what's going on before it actually happens. Now, another problem is buffer pools. It can be a full-time job. And the problem is, if it was a batch application instead, then I have seen it grow over the last year. And then I know how I can set it over time. And I somehow have a trend, I did capacity planning, all that. In this case, it is not possible. It's a migration. And it just comes to you with its full force. And if you change something now, you can just count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, pick up. Somebody already saw the change. As fast as that. It happens more often than not when the change happens to be really bad. So in DB212, you can actually pre-test changes to buffer pool sizes. It's called buffer pool simulation. Starting in DB212, I use the alter buffer pool command, and then I have the attributes SP size for the theoretical simulated size, and one of the thresholds as well, sequential steal. Let's say, for example, that I want to see what happens if I increase it by 20%. So I start my command, and then I give this estimated size, which is 20% greater than the actual size, and that's all that I'm going to say. And DB2 is going to say, sure, from now on, I am going to track it. So how do I see? I execute the command display buffer pool, and it is going to include a new section that is going to come in zeros because this is the first execution. But if I give it 1 hour, 1 day, or 1 week, as much as you want, you come back again, and then you take a look at this section and these two numbers. They will tell you about the I/O activity that might have been avoided. And the performance manual also comes with this manual formula. I say manual because you have to calculate it yourself using these two numbers, and they will tell you the number of avoidable sync I/O. It's informative and it is indeed useful. So take your time, try it. If it didn't work with 20%, try 30, 40. Just keep trying. There is no free lunch, so you still have to do your homework. Now, another thing is that, well, when a new thread comes and a new statement comes, full prepare is actually done. So then the info is inserted into the dynamic statement cache. And then from that, the access path information is going to be solved. But that changes very often, all the time. It's so fast that I cannot have any kind of control. DB212 also came into the rescue, and it offers something called dynamic SQL plan stability. So the way that it works is this. It works actually very similar to optimization hints. So you're going to save this information in the catalog, and then DB2 is going to ask, is this a stabilized statement? No. Okay, so do prepare as usual. And if yes, then the information might already be in the cache. But if it is not, then it is going to be pulled from the catalog and then loaded. All right, so how do I play with that? I have another command. The command is start dynamic query capture. And I also need to identify my application by using user ID, my favorite, which is the statement ID from the cache, or the number of executions. Also be careful with what you say. This is how you set up your command. So you attach it to a group. This group is pretty random. It doesn't mean anything. I can also create my group cats1. So my first group of cats is going to be stabilized, as long as they come from this user ID and they have been executed at least this number of times. And if in the future, most statements fully match these two criteria, then add it to my group of cats. And then DB2 will say, sure, why not? And that's all that you will get. And then how do I know what's actually stabilized? What you do in that case is go to the catalog table, sysdin query. And there you will find all the information. And by the way, my favorite or the recommended way to work with this command would be taking the statement ID from the dynamic statement cache and then use it here. Because you want to be careful with what you do. You do not want to stabilize everything from the user. And also, you do not want to stabilize everything. Now, some rules apply in here. If I do revoke, it's going to be invalid. If I do alter, invalid. And several other conditions. So in the table sysdin query, you will also have the columns copy ID and valid to tell you if the information is still valid or not. And if you want to just get rid of it and go back to the previous behavior, you can use the command free stabilized dynamic query. Now, stop right here and think about this one. So I can stabilize them. I can set up my access path info in Stone. And what else am I forgetting? Well, guess what? The order of your actions has a lot of importance. What do I mean by that? If you play with this one, and then you play with simulated buffer pools, you just lost or you just missed the advantage, because the size of a buffer pool has influence in the optimizer. So if I stabilize it and then I change the buffer pool, then I might have missed another advantage from the optimizer. And I had no idea. There was no way to know. So also be careful with the order of your actions. Now the next one, and I wrote an iDoc article about this one very, very recently. Finding the right values for your cPalms is quite a headache, especially with applications coming from other places. One of these cases is the idle thread amount. That's also the case. But in my application, in the old environment, because there was only one, all applications were infinite. Why should that change? Well, because I have other 50 sharing the same resources as you. Okay. Okay, but I need it for at least an hour. But the other guy says that he wants it for 2 hours. And then the other guy says that he wants his connections to be renewed every minute. How do you work with that? You again will go to the SM profile and set it up only for this application. And another reminder is you have another new zparm to tell you when these profiles are going to be activated. So this is what we will do. The recipe is indeed the same. So I will still define my profile ID, and then in profile attributes, I will go to the column keywords, but in this case, I will use this string. Attribute number 2 will take the value that it would take as the threshold. Attribute 1 is going to tell DB2 what to do, if you want a message or if you want it to be canceled. There are many combinations, so check it in the manuals before defining it. Now the next nightmare. I can guess. Actually, if you have seen this one as many times as I have, then you can recognize this code by pure memory. It is the maximum number of locks per table space or per user. And it is quite a pain. It is quite a pain because how do you set this one up? It's more often than not trial and error. So, okay, I'm going to give you this number. Try. No, didn't work. Okay, and increase it again. No, it didn't work. And every time I change it, I have to go through a lot of paperwork because it is a change in the zip arms. So I might as well be sure that the value is the right one before actually going through the paperwork. How can I do that? You know what I am going to say by now. Yes, DB212. And yes, DSM profiles. Now, DSM profiles allow you to work with global variables in version 12, starting in function level 500. One example is archive tables. You can set up that global variable so that they work with your profiles. Okay. But this is a zipper. This is one name, and this is the other one. This is not a variable. In function level 507, it came to us as a global variable so that I can use it to test it with my applications before I change the zipper. And in one of my previous jobs, I actually had the chance to set it up just to the maximum number. And if it was still failing, then the application had to change. But you might not be lucky as that. So go to your profile, define it, then go to profile attributes. In the column keywords, you will say global variable. And in this case, you will have two flavors. One of them is going to be for table space, maximum number of locks. And the other flavor is going to be for the case of users. I am using the column attribute 1. Attribute 2 will be set to null value. That's another case in which DSM profiles will save you time. And now the last one, and I included this one just for the sake of completeness. In fact, I would tell you to be extremely careful with this one. So another problem is that when you open the doors, anybody can come, right? As long as they have the user and password. If you didn't set up the controls that I showed 20 minutes ago with Rakev. Okay, so I have 500 applications connected at the same time. They are almost hitting the limit of the ZPAM con DBAT, the maximum number of connections coming to DDF. And I don't know what is connecting. I don't know who is it. I don't know where they're coming from. I don't know why their connection pools have too many connections. What can I do? How can I limit that? How can I find out if it is going to happen? And if it happens, how can I stop them? How can I enqueue those connections? And this is what I say careful. Careful because, and I am talking about real life experience and common sense as well. So if you enqueue connections from the application, then from the point of view of the application, the user, the developer, and the application people, well, they will have several things to say. Okay, so the application is stuck, the application is slow, the database is slow, the database is not working, DB2 is down. Which one do you think they are actually going to say? So it actually happens that, well, at least from what I have seen, people tend to to say the most negative comment they have, just to make you move fast. So then there is a chance that they can actually say DB2 is down. And then you have to explain how DB2 was up. But you were creating too many connections and they were just put on hold. They don't want to hear that. Okay, that was my heads up for you. You can also do this one with DSM profiles. And you do not need any function level. This was available since January of this current year, 2021. And the link to this PDF is in the notes section from this same slide. So let's see how. In this case, I am going to monitor everybody. So when I set up my profile, I am going to do another contradiction. So in this case, in the beginning, I told you not to use wildcards, but in this specific case, I'm going to tell you use only wildcards because we are monitoring everything. And once you have it, go to the profile attributes table and the column keywords. Now you have two values. One to monitor the condibat value, and the other one to monitor maxdbat. These are the values, connections and threads. They are mapped to different ZPARMs. Attribute 2 is going to have the threshold, and attribute 1 is going to tell what to do about it. So be careful with that. And again, I repeat, there are in fact several labels and several flavors for exception. Not all of them do the same. So be sure to check the official documentation and choose the appropriate action for you. Now, some of the closing thoughts. I have been naming several topics so far, so I hope that by now you are not confused. We have used a ton of features from DB212. You can prevent people sharing user IDs. For this one, we actually used Rakef. We used dynamic SQL plan stability to see how we can record the access path info from our dynamic statements. We can also simulate buffer pools before we actually execute a change. And we can use DSM profiles to accomplish several tasks, to change registers, global variables, or ZPARMs. And we can attach specific actions to these profiles. And as a last reminder, this is only one subset of what you can actually do with DSM profiles. For example, if you were working with IDAA, you can also control a lot of that using DSM profiles. So be sure to check it out. I am sure that there is going to be something extra that is not included in here, and you will like to see that. So it is a lot of info. Yes. It is a lot of work. Yes. I have seen some places in which the DB2s are actually split into two groups. There is one group of DBAs for the classical batch applications, and there is another group for the remote applications. And that team is more often than not formed by young people because they are more familiar with their Linux counterparts. Yes, I've been there before. It's a very different mindset. It changes all the time. You have to stay close with the users. That doesn't change at all. It's still the same. But DB212 has come to offer many options in which you will have finer and more detailed controls, so that you're not actually stuck into having everybody in the table and get to a common agreement. You can say, okay, so you use this profile, you use that profile, you use that profile, and we are good to go. Simple. But yes, as I said, there is no free lunch. You still have to do your homework. You still have to study. You still have to find your optimal values. But now you have more options to set them up. So it's a lot of monitoring. Yes, it is. Remember that your actions can have immediate impact, and the order of your actions is super important. And everything you know from DB2 11 and 10 and before that pretty much still applies, especially the topic on WLM. So this is a whole journey. This is all about bringing more impact and presence to DB2 and Z. There are many people, in fact, and not so long ago, I saw in LinkedIn several offers of people dealing with only migrations in and out of DB2. So for these cases, we have this kind of information. So I hope that it has been useful for you. There is going to be a Q&A section. I hope you have found it useful. And thank you, and enjoy the rest of the conference. And please don't forget to leave feedback. This session is labeled as 2BG. So thank you very much, and have a nice day, and enjoy the conference.
So thank you very much, Javier. Great session. Very, very interesting information and loads of it too. Do we have any questions? Oh yes, Colin has put a comment. When I was testing profiles yesterday, I forgot to put any location. Profile messages said all active, but then I saw in history table rejected, must have a location. Once I added star, it worked.
Yeah, I think this is important. So that the messages that profile got accepted doesn't mean it got really accepted. So you need to go into the history tables and look, what other options were really picked up. So good point.
Yep. I had, when Javier was doing his presentation, I felt that feeling of a father sending his child off to university and giving him or her the words of parenthood, like, don't forget this, don't forget that, do this, do that. Everything needs to be remembered all of the time. That was a great session. So thanks very much, Javier. Any other comments? Okay, that was session 2BG. I really enjoyed that. So thanks very much. Thanks everybody for attending. We now have an hour's break before we meet together for a session by, well, modesty prevents me. So we'll see you all later. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.